define spirituality, one quote that really comes to mind is that of Emil Durkheim. And since I don't have my lesson plan in front of me, I'm going to have to do my best to paraphrase here, but I promise I tried to practice this earlier. So, that which we deem sacred, whether it be actions, behaviors, certain mindsets, or even objects that we engage with in our lives, is really defined as that which we set aside from the current normatives, practices, mundane aspects of life, right? Such that, and I think that that's a bit fancy in what he's trying to say, but really such that, breaking it down, of course, we should be enacting things that transform that normal moment, that typical routine aspect of the everyday world and life and how we feel, and transcend into something more spiritual, higher sensed, really ascend into a higher vibration, as a lot of people would say today in the metaphysical community. So, with that in mind, just to kind of give some more context to it, I would say that a lot of us do this in our own personal ways, but we also do this in very traditional ways, right? I come from a Christian background, so of course I have celebrated a lot of those very common and mainstream holidays of the American Western world. But as a pagan, as a witch, as a nature faith believer, I've encountered other systems and traditions and ceremonies and holidays that have now been incorporated on top of those traditions, such that really my life is now filled not just with what I've chosen, but where I've come from. And in this way, I've never really had to say this is more important than this spiritual practice, or this tradition is more important than that, or more legitimate than that, or more important to me than that. Because even though I don't practice the things of my family, I still find an importance in engaging with my origins, right? Engaging with my first moment of spiritual understanding, which was in Christianity. And I give a lot of respect to that because of how far I've come in my own spiritual journey in my own way, having gotten back a power over defining what it means to be a spiritualist, what it means to be a practitioner of some kind of spiritual journey, right? So that's just, and again, I think I went a bit on a tangent there, but I did want to say, some objects and how that fits, some ceremonies and how that fits, or really a cultural regard would be to say there's a lot of witches who would use ceremony of the seasons, right? The Sabbats or lunar espats, the equinoxes, solstices, or even traditions of the Brittonic world, that of the Celtic traditions like Yule and Lunessa, that of May Day, and so forth, right? So, on the other hand, we also have sacred objects. And this can be a little harder to understand, but in the first segment of understanding paganism and witchcraft, Ways of Witch Part 1, we discussed totemism, which is really the practice of regarding items and objects with sacred power, something more than just being what it is. And we can see this in how Christians regard the cross, how pagans regard the wand, or the cauldron, or any number of their spiritual tools, how the Buddhist or the Hindu might regard the Japamala beads, or how sound bowls in Tibetan traditions are treated, right? And how white sage is seen by First Nation tribes. This is all an example of how we deem certain things, because of what they are and what they mean and their importance, as sacred, as more than the common, more than the mundane, more than the normal everyday things, right? Certainly, my sacred objects, my talismans, my amulets are far more important than just my house lamp or my desk lamp, right? So we set it apart. We give it a different sacred regard. And in this way, we decide, right? That's the wisdom in what Emil Durkheim is saying there, is that the individual, the culture, the society doesn't have to work by any larger grand scheme of what it means to be a spiritualist. They can decide for themselves what enacts spiritual power for them, what enacts tradition for them, what defines that expression for them.